All right, we're moving on now to deeper parts of the brain called the diencephalon. But before we get to that, we got these large. So you can see we did a basically a mid sagittal, but you're like, hey, you forgot some pieces that are sticking off. Yep, I left that these blue. These are the ventricles. These are the ventricles of the brain. I'll go ahead and type it. I think you know how to spell ventricles, but eh, ventricles of the brain. All right, so you're gonna have so you have this big one here on the side. This is the lateral ventricle, the whole thing. So whether I click, it's just gonna keep giving me different parts of the lateral ventricle. And there's two of them. So this is the left lateral ventricle. There's gonna be another one on the right side of the brain. So that's the lateral ventricles. There's two of them. And here, basically, like in the middle of the thalamus, the thalamus is right here. This is going to be the third ventricle. And then at the very bottom, just anterior to the cerebellum, you're going to have the fourth ventricle. Remember, this is where cerebrospinal fluid, these are big pools of cerebrospinal fluid. And remember, it's not just in the ventricles. So it's produced here in the ventricles and it's stored here, but it's also all around the brain, all around the brain in the meninges. Remember, it's in the subarachnoid space, and also it travels down through the spinal cord, and it surrounds the spinal cord. So this is the ventricles are large pools of cerebrospinal fluid, and the CSF serves many functions. It mechanically protects the brain because it's basically the brain is floating, because all around the outside of this brain there's a thin layer of cerebrospinal fluid, both on the outside and and on the inside. So it's basically floating in cerebrospinal fluid. So it's a mechanical barrier or protection for the brain. It's also a chemical protection because remember, there's a blood-brain barrier. So certain toxins and things that would be harmful for the brain are unable to escape through the capillaries, in the blood vessels and enter the cerebrospinal fluid. So the CSF has like the perfect composition of ions and glucose, and it keeps out the things that the brain doesn't want, like toxins and disease. So those are the main functions of the CSF for the brain. All right, so now some more things, some structures that are important when it comes to the cerebrospinal fluid and the ventricles. So first, I got to get rid of this ventricle. So let's see what I got to do here. Let me select. So I'm going to hide this lateral ventricle here because there's a structure hiding inside that we're going to need to see. Let's go and hide that. All right, there it worked. All right, so now you can see this structure right here. This was inside the lateral ventricle. There's going to be another one on this side inside the right lateral ventricle, and you'll be able to see it right over here. Oh, it disappeared. Undo. Okay, boom. Exit. All right, let's see it again now. Here we go. Choroid plexus. This is the choroid plexus. So that's the structure that actually creates the cerebrospinal fluid. Choroid plexus within the ventricles. Remember, this is made of the ependymal cells, which actually produce and help to circulate the cerebrospinal fluid. Those ependymal cells, they have like little cilia, which is like little hairs, and they flap around, which helps to circulate the cerebrospinal fluid around the brain and around the spinal cord. All right, so now we're moving on to what's called the diencephalon. Diencephalon. And that includes right here the thalamus and the hypothalamus and what's called the epithalamus. So the diencephalon includes the thalamus and the hypothalamus and also the epithalamus. Now, you're not going to need to know this, but like the medulla makes up what's called the myencephalon. The pons and the cerebellum make up what's called the metencephalon. And remember, this was the diencephalon. The mesencephalon is the midbrain, and the telencephalon is the cerebrum. So today we're doing the diencephalon, the thalamus. So I'm going to go ahead and here's the thalamus. That's a little too big. Let's see if I can make that a little smaller. Boom, boom. Probably big again. No, it's small. All right, so there's the thalamus, and now who? Now we're going to the hypothalamus right here. Thalamus again. Here's the epithalamus back here. All right, so this is the diencephalon right here. That's what we're going to be working on today. All right, so there we have the brain. So I've now removed all the ventricles. I remove what's called the basal ganglia. I remove what's called the limbic system to get, and this is actually, I believe, that's the right thalamus, right? Medial nuclei of the right thalamus. Okay, yeah, so that's the right thalamus. All right, so we're going to go on the diencephalon. So first we're going to go with the thalamus. Thalamus is going to be located right here. So go ahead and highlight that. That's the thalamus. I'm going to undo it because I might need to type. All right, so that's the thalamus. And its main role is it's a relay station for sensory information. So sensory information is coming up through the spinal cord, through the medulla, through the pons, and it goes to it gets to the thalamus. And it's like a relay station. So it's gonna send it. I can't tell which one is this the somatosensory and this is the motor cortex. I think and it's either this one or this one. I'm gonna go with this one. So sensory information comes up to the spinal cord, goes to the thalamus, and it's gonna relay it to the correct spot on the somatosensory cortex that it needs to go. So it's a relay center for sensory information, and it also plays a role in movement because when the primary motor cortex up here, it'll send information down to what's called the basal ganglia. And we're going to go over this. And then the basal ganglia, they have a role in initiating skeletal muscle movement. So when the primary motor cortex sends it to the basal ganglia, then the basal ganglia stops inhibiting the thalamus, and then that allows the primary motor cortex to actually initiate that motor movement. So it also has like a kind of a motor function because it works together with the basal ganglia and the primary motor cortex in order to initiate those muscle movements. All right, so now we had the thalamus. Now we're going to move on to the hypothalamus. That's going to be located just anterior and just inferior to the thalamus right here. So it's going to be right here. Here's your hypothalamus right there. And it's got several jobs. So go ahead and mark that on your brain diagram. And I'm going to get rid of it. Get rid of my pen. Go over here. And we got a lot of jobs. All right. So I'm going to go bigger and I'm going to go red. I'm going to go bigger again. All right. Job number one controls pituitary gland. Pituitary gland. Ooh. All right. Fix my spelling for me. And pituitary gland's right here. So you can see it. It extends in what's called the infundibulum from from the hypothalamus. So here's your pituitary gland. It's called the master gland because the pituitary is the gland that controls your thyroid gland that controls like your metabolism. It also controls your adrenal glands. So in times of stress, the release of adrenaline or cortisol, and also it controls your sex glands. So like in the males, the testes, the females, the ovaries, and it releases it stimulates the release of different sex hormones like testosterone or estrogen or oxytocin, progesterone, whatever, you know, for the normal cycles of males and females like spermatogenesis and oogenesis. All right, so it controls the pituitary gland, which is the master gland, which controls a lot of stuff. So that's a very important role of the hypothalamus. It also too regulates eating and drinking, but has what's called the satiety centers, like in the brain that says, "Hey, I'm full. I'm not hungry," or "I'm thirsty. I need to drink something." That's the hypothalamus. It controls body temperature. Controls body temperature. So if it receives signals that body temperature is too low, it's going to send output to effectors to raise the body temperature up, and it'll bring body temperature down if it receives input that body temperatures are getting too low. All right. And then also it regulates what's called your circadian rhythm. Am I gonna be able to spell this? Rhythm. I think that's right, right? Circadian rhythm. That's like basically your day night cycle. So where hey, it's midnight, you're tired. It's 9 in the morning, you're awake. So you're even if there was no light or no sun, no dark, no clocks, you'd probably get tired at some time, and you would wake up at some time, and that would happen automatically. And that's called your circadian rhythm. What else? Is there anything else that does? I mean, that's all also does regulates emotion and some behavior. Obviously, it integrates activities of the autonomic nervous system that's basically through the pituitary gland and through the adrenal glands. All right, so that's the hypothalamus. All right, and the last part, let's see if I can get rid of my text box. And all right, let's see if I can just click on it. Think there we go. I got it. All right, so this region back here, there's the thalamus, and then this region, let me go ahead and write it. It's right in here. This is called the epithalamus, but let me go ahead and get rid of my typing or my drawing, get rid of my pen. I don't really want it to be red anymore. Let's see. All right, so this structure back here, that's the epithalamus, but more specifically, it's called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland, you've probably heard of it. It secretes a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin. You might have, if you go to CVS or Walgreens or whatever, you'll in the herbal sections, you'll see melatonin supplements for melatonin. And what melatonin is, it's a hormone that promotes sleep. So some people will take 2, 5, 10 milligrams of melatonin at night, and within 30 minutes they become very, very sleepy. So that's the function of the pineal gland right here. It secretes melatonin, which promotes sleep. So remember, the thalamus was a relay station for sensory information. The hypothalamus had many jobs, and that could turn into a written question because a lot of jobs, here they are, there's 4 of them. A lot of jobs could be, hey, can you list 3 functions of the hypothalamus? That could be a written question. And then here you had the pituitary gland. All right, so that's the diencephalon, thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus. And next time we'll be doing the basal ganglia. All right, I'll talk to you next time.